Sinister alien base discovered beneath Antarctic ice. 30 years of terrifying secrets exposed. Sarah Whitaker had been scraping by, working nights at the local diner while trying to raise her teenage son, Jake, alone in the quaint suburb of Oak Ridge. She came home from work, bone-tired, only to find Jake staring wide-eyed at the computer screen. The glow flickered against the dark walls, casting eerie shadows that danced like ghosts. "Mom, you've got to see this," he exclaimed, eager to share the latest explosion of paranoia. The whispers of a sinister alien base hidden beneath Antarctic ice. It was a world where reality crumbled, overshadowed by tales of conspiracy and government cover-ups that turned ordinary folks into frantic believers. The storm rattled the windows, the wind howling outside, but nothing compared to the hurricane of confusion swirling in Sarah's mind. "Jake, can we please talk about something else?" But Jake's fingers tapped furiously as he scrolled through a chat room filled with messages about vanishing research teams, UFO sightings, and eerie lights that flickered above their very street. Panic seeped into her heart, shadows of doubt creeping in. There was something unsettling in the way he was glued to this otherworldly tale, and the whispers among their neighbors only amplified the tension of it all. In the weeks that followed, the suburban peace shattered with odd occurrences. Drones zipped through the night sky like intruders, while undercurrents of fear buzzed through the community, eyes watching, something lurking just out of sight. Sarah noticed furtive glances exchanged during grocery runs. "Did you see those drones?" someone would murmur. "I heard they're not government." She bit her lip, unease clenching in her stomach. And that look in Jake's eyes, filled with dread, as he insisted he felt eyes watching from the shadows, gnawed at her heart. One night, the tension peaked. She stumbled home after another grueling shift only to find Jake trembling, his face pale, wide eyes betraying a terror that froze her blood. "Something's out there, Mom. The neighbors, they're meeting. Every night." It was time to confront the shadows of their ordinary lives that were now gripped by the extraordinary. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The clock ticked ominously as she marched over to the old military man next door, Mr. Langston. His yard loomed dark and unruly, the kind you instinctively avoided. But she felt the undeniable urge to confront him. Each step heavy with dread, her resolve trembling like leaves caught in a storm. Addressing him, her voice barely more than a whisper, she demanded to know what he was hiding, what secrets lurked behind that friendly facade. His face shifted. The warm, benign smile faded, replaced by a seriousness that sent shivers down her spine. He talked of shadows, and truths not meant to be revealed, of dangers coiling closer with every beat of the night. The sky lit up like fireworks, searing through the darkness, as terror crashed over Sarah like a wave. Panic enveloped her. Was there truth in the chaos, something her son feared but she'd brushed off? The fabric of their reality began to unravel, and she knew, with a gut-wrenching certainty, that the invasion didn't just come from above but from within their very community. What had she allowed to fester next door, and what storm loomed over Oak Ridge? As dread settled like fog, she understood. Their fight for truth and survival was just beginning. The nightly council of hushed voices grew within Mr. Langston's yard, the shadows looming ever larger. Sarah felt herself swallowed by a pit of dread, as if an unseen force pulled her closer yet rooted her to the ground. She glanced back at her son Jake, eyes wide and pleading, begging her to turn back. But she couldn't. Not now. They were gathering, Many of the neighbors she once waved to, faces familiar yet unrecognizable now. Something deep inside Sarah twisted. As she stepped further into this shadowed realm, she recalled how she'd brushed aside their faux friendliness, the forced smiles hiding perhaps something malignant beneath. "Mr. Langston," she called out, her voice trembling like the branches of a tree in the wind, breaking through the murmur of confusion. "You have to tell me what is happening." The gathering shifted, a collective sharp intake of breath. Mr. Langston turned slowly, his sunken eyes narrowing. "You shouldn't be here, Sarah," he rasped, each word carrying the weight of a warning. "This is not a place for outsiders." "What are you all hiding?" Jake chimed in, his youthful bravado souring into fear. It melted her heart, that resolve she'd built to protect him cracking like the ice on the very surface of those conspiracies they had been reading. The group fell silent, eyes darting between them, as if gauging the consequences of their next move. The air felt charged, brimming with tension, an electric hum that vibrated through Sarah's bones. "Some have seen things we weren't meant to," a woman finally spoke, her voice soft yet packed with dread, "and they're no longer just stories." "Things? What things?" Sarah urged, her pulse now a thunderous beat in her ears. Panic threatened to spill over. The shadows seemed to whisper secrets that drove her to the brink of sanity. Jake leaned closer, his fingers gripping her arm. "Please, Mom," she fought back the urge to flee, knowing they were entwined in a web of increasingly real nightmares. The gathering turned into quiet chaos. People muttered about strange lights, the night sky splitting open, revealing visions that danced in their minds like distant horrors. Suddenly, a low hum echoed through the air, rising from below. Sarah's heart sank as she realized it was coming from Langston's home. "We need to go," Mr. Langston urged suddenly, his face pale. "They know we're here." With that, chaos erupted. The neighbors scrambled, moving toward the cover of darkness cast by their houses. Fear became palpable as they dashed like shadows fleeing the light. Sarah grabbed Jake's hand, her grip tight as they ran, stumbling past covered faces and whispered names. But not all of them fled. In the distance, she caught a glimpse figures breaking from the edges of the woodlet, movement alien and frantic. Their pace quickened, instincts screaming to escape the growing dread. But just ahead, an unseen shape loomed, dark and amorphous, every instinct screamed to turn back. What had they unleashed? As they sprinted home, breathless with terror, the world around them seemed to pulse with an unseen rhythm. The lights flashed overhead, not from the storm, but from something else. Something alive. Seconds turned into an eternity before they finally bolted through their front door, locking it behind them. Breathing heavily, heart racing, thoughts spiraled, refusing to untangle. The hum had subsided, replaced by the deafening sound of silence. But the worst was yet to come. They heard knocking soft at first, barely touching the wood. Then it grew louder, more insistent, shaking the door. Each knock resonated in their bones, pulling them to the cold reality of what lay beyond the threshold. And then, just above the roar of their panic, came a voice, low and guttural, seeping through the door. Let us in. Would they answer? Or would they let whatever was out there take what was left of their sanity? The choice loomed, and the night felt like it was ready to consume them whole. The knocking stopped. Silence filled the room, stretching seconds into hours. Sarah and Jake stood, hearts thundering, locked in an unspoken pact. They barely breathed, listening, waiting for a sound that might signal escape or doom. But it was the words echoing in her mind that paralyzed her. Let us in. The shadows in the corners seemed to deepen, thickening as if they had a life of their own. Sarah felt Jake's hand tremble in hers, a small reminder of his presence, stark against the mounting dread. "Mom, what do we do?" Before she could respond, the voice returned, more insistent, pulling at her thoughts. "We can help you." It twisted in her stomach, the promise laced with danger. Memories of the gathering flooded back, faces obscured by fear, whispers of the unseeable, and Mr. Langston's warning. Was this what they had been warned against? Help? She dared to ask, voice shaking. We can show you the truth, the voice insisted, a rasp coated with dark honey. But first you must let us in. A cold sweat dripped down Sarah's back. Jake, she whispered, looking into his frightened eyes, we can't trust them. Suddenly, a loud thud echoed against the door, a forceful impact that sent vibrations through the walls. It sounded like something large had struck. Jake flinched, inching closer to her as the darkness thickened. Mom, what if it's them? He asked, eyes darting, filling with tears. What if it gets inside? No amount of reassurance could settle her nerves. She could only grip Jake tighter, feeling the anchor of his youth tethering her to reason. And yet, in the periphery of her mind, uncertainty flickered. Tiny fragments of doubt about the neighbors replayed in a loop, the glances, the murmurs, the sense of being different. Then came soft whispering, a sound no louder than a breath. It slithered under the door, slinking around Sarah's legs like a serpent, just waiting for its chance. You can't fight against what you don't understand. As fear sank its teeth into her, an idea crept in, a wild thought that maybe, just maybe, there was something they needed to learn. But at what cost? Another heavy thud rattled the door, this time matched by a sound like nails scraping metal. Panic flared, and she turned to the windows. The curtains were drawn, but an eerie glow flickered outside, illuminating the room in an otherworldly haze. The noise escalated into a rhythm, pounding like a heartbeat, a bile-like sensation arising in her throat. She wavered for a split second. Should they run? Just lock the door tighter, Jake pleaded, eyes wild and searching hers for guidance. Right, but before she could complete the thought, the door buckled. It creaked ominously, responding to the pressure of something slamming against it from the outside. With adrenaline surging through her veins, Sarah stepped back, urging Jake to follow her toward the far corner of the room. We need to find another way out. The glow crept closer, intertwining with the shadows. As Sarah fumbled with the window latch, adrenaline prickled across her skin. Her mind raced. What if they're right? Maybe they're not here to harm us. The instant she pried the window open, a surge of icy air gusted in a biting reminder of what lay outside. She paused. Was she truly ready to leap into the unknown? In the next breath, she heard the door splintering, shattering the fragile veil of hope she clung to. And just then, a flash of silver darted past, snagging her eye. Her breath caught. Did you see that? She gasped. Jake followed her gaze, fear morphing into confusion. See what? Before she could explain, the door burst open. The air thickened with a sense of foreboding as silhouettes poured into the room, dark forms framed by the light outside. Let us in and you'll find out, they whispered in unison, their voices intertwining in a terrifying symphony. As the shadows moved closer, Sarah's heart pounded in her ears, and she knew, whatever awaited them beyond this moment would change everything forever. What did they truly want? And was there any chance of escape now? The flickering light outside pulsed like a heartbeat, alive with an unknown promise, as the dark figures loomed larger, and then, just as quickly, they froze, eyes directed over Sarah's shoulder. What had they sensed? What was behind her? The shadows jerked as the figures peered past Sarah, faces twisted in expressions Sarah couldn't decipher. Swallowing hard, she turned slowly, dread coiling in her gut. The room grew colder, the air heavy with unearthly stillness. Behind her, looming in the doorway, was a creature. It wasn't one of the neighbors. No human could contort and twist like that. Its limbs stretched too long, fingers splayed with razor-like nails, glinting in the flickering light. Its skin glimmered, reflecting hues that seemed impossible, colors that shouldn't exist. Mom! Jake gasped, fear paralyzing his every muscle. He pressed against the wall, trying to meld into the shadows. "No!" she hissed, instinctively shielding him with her own body. "Get back!" The creature stepped forward, its head tilting in a way that felt wrong, unnatural. It opened its mouth, revealing rows of needle-like teeth like a predator as promise. "We can help you understand it," rasped, voice a chilling echo that reverberated off the walls. "Understand?" Sarah whispered, her heart racing. "Understand what?" The room felt smaller, the walls tightening around them. The other figures behind it were still, but their presence suffocated her. She could hear Jake's shallow breaths, feel his tiny body trembling against her. "Join us," the creature crooned. "You are so close to the truth. We can show you the way." An unsettling shiver crawled up her spine. "The way to what?" "Freedom," it replied, a smile stretching across its elongated face. "Enlightenment. The doorway to our world." A wave of nausea hit Sarah. She turned back to the window, but the glow outside flickered aggressively now, as if alive. Panic seized her as she realized they were surrounded. The world beyond was no longer welcoming. "What do we do?" Jake whimpered, gripping her arm tighter. The desperation in his voice cut deeper than the darkness enveloping them. "Stay quiet," she said, scanning the room for anything that could shield them. The kitchen knife lay on the counter like a beacon of false hope. "We need to." Another creature lunged into the room, joining its kin. Their forms blurred together, blending into the shadows, a twisted silhouette that clawed at her sense of reality. "Mom!" Jake shouted, voice breaking. He darted toward the kitchen, but she was faster. "No!" she yelled, snatching his wrist, pulling him back. "Don't! They want to separate us." The creature's eyes glimmered with unholy hunger. They craved her fear. "Stop fighting," one hissed. "You belong with us." Almost against her will, Sarah felt a pull, a whispering curiosity that lured at her thoughts. What if joining them meant something greater? What if her fears were misplaced? But that doubt turned into dread as she caught a glimpse of something behind the creatures, a dark maw hanging open, exuding an unnatural chill. It reminded her of the door the townspeople had warned her about, a gateway to chaos. "No," she muttered. "I won't let you take him." In that moment, it all crumbled, the promises of truth, the haunting whispers of enchantment. She knew what they wanted. They sought to feast on her hope, turning it into despair. With a sharp motion, she yanked the kitchen knife from the counter, its weight foreign but empowering. "Stay behind me," she called out, heart racing, adrenaline pulsing through her veins. The creatures recoiled slightly, intrigued. "Then you choose to fight?" one asked, amused and cruel, as its companions moved closer, their movements synchronized, a learned dance of chaos. "I choose to protect," Sarah shouted, adrenaline surging like fire through her limbs. As a wave of darkness engulfed the room, she felt the ground beneath her shake. What were they hiding? What secrets lingered beyond the threshold of their twisted promises? In that split second of decision, as the creatures lunged towards them, Sarah made her choice. She would confront the truth, whatever it might be. But then the wall behind her cracked, splintering like glass, and as everything began to crumble around them, Jake screamed. "Mom! Was there still a way out? Did she have the strength to fight through and protect him, or were they both caught in a snare far more ominous than she imagined?" The air grew heavy, as if they were standing on the edge of a bizarre abyss, and she knew, without doubt, the real terror was just beginning. What else lay in wait beyond their fragile sanctuary? What could they unleash next? The world exploded into chaos as the wall buckled, sending shards of plaster tumbling like confetti in a storm. Sarah tightened her grip on the knife, the metal a small assurance against the otherworldly nightmare closing in around them. "Mom! We need to get out of here!" Jake's voice cracked, trembling with fear. He darted a glance back at the creatures, those grinning faces filling her with dread. Their eyes, multiple shades of burning colors, were fixated on her, watching with a sadistic curiosity. She couldn't lose him. Not now. "Follow me," Sarah shouted, backing away, her gaze darting around the room, searching for some escape. The other creatures were converging, their long limbs slicing through the shadows with sickening grace. She could hear the sound of their breaths, hissing like steam from a pressure cooker. The room seemed to pulse with a heartbeat, and with each thrum, they drew closer. Those fetid scents assailed her like wet earth, and something far more sinister. The knife felt lighter in her hand, as though it too was losing conviction. "Mom!" Jake's grip on her hand tightened as another creature swept into view, its elongated body undulating like an eel. "Please!" Spurred by raw instinct, Sarah dashed toward the back door, praying with all her might it was still intact. "Come join us!" A voice dripped with honeyed menace. "You cannot escape your destiny." The shadows twisted and morphed, and with every ounce of strength Sarah had, she pushed against them. The door loomed closer, but it felt miles away. She could almost hear it creaking open, inviting them into the unknown. Like a symmetrical nightmare, the creatures echoed her desperation. "We do not wish to harm you," one cooed, its voice winding like smoke. "You'll understand. You'll see." "Shut up," Sarah yelled, her breath quickening, urgency clawing at her chest. She dug deep, focusing all her resolve on the door. She sprinted toward it, praying it wouldn't buckle under the weight of the shadows that pursued them. Jake's small feet pattered behind her, the sound a heartbeat that synchronized with her own terror. Just as they reached the door, a shadow lunged past, claws raking towards them. "No!" Sarah screamed, shoving Jake sideways just in time. The creature whipped past her, slamming into the door frame and howling in rage. Her fantasy of escape shattered as the door shuddered, groaning under the weight of the assault. It was no longer her salvation, it was a trap. "Mom, we can't stay here," Jake cried, panic flooding his voice. In that moment, Sarah glimpsed the deeper darkness behind the strange figures. Their despair mirrored hers, their invites masked in malevolence. A horrifying realization washed over her. Every creature in the room wanted to feed on the remnants of hope, spreading that despair to their world beyond. "Jake, we have to fight." She turned, knife brandished. The world closed in tighter, the shadows undulating, and for the first time, she felt the spine-tingling sensation that they were merely playthings in an unfathomable puppet show. Then the crack in the wall widened, the sound like thunder rumbling in her ears. The creatures froze, their gaze flicking between her and the growing dark fissure. In that void, she felt a beckoning, something that thrummed and pulsed with ominous power. Jake whimpered again, raw fear undulating in his words. "Mom?" Before she could answer, from the void, a pulsating light flickered, illuminating the room with a sickly green glow. Shapes began to swirl outward from the darkness, figures merely hinted at by the brilliant light. "Join us," they sang, voices interlacing in a haunting symphony. From the shadow's depths, something larger began to emerge, eclipsing the light and swallowing it whole. "Run!" Sarah yelled, adrenaline screaming in her veins as creatures leaped toward them, claws raised. They dashed toward the crack, shards of plaster cascading around them, every step filled with raw, electric fear. "Mom, what is happening?" "I don't know," she cried, the truth stinging her lips. Just as they reached the edge of the crack, the wall groaned again, now commanding their attention. The real terror lurked just beyond their fragile sanctuary. "Stay with me," Sarah shouted, but that warning felt weak against the encroaching tide. Was there still a way out? Or had they already crossed the threshold into a world woven with shadows, forever lost in an endless night? The last creature lunged, mouth open wide, teeth glistening, and Sarah felt it all slip. "Mom!" Jake screamed as they stumbled, the darkness reaching for their very souls. What hope remained when the real nightmare was waiting to be unveiled? What if the true horror had only just begun? The darkness exploded around them as they plunged into the crack, a gaping maw that felt alive, pulsating with a raw hunger. Sarah held Jake's hand like a lifeline as they tumbled into the void, the shadows clawing at their ankles, trying to drag them back where they didn't belong. A heavy thud echoed in that space, like the heartbeat of some monstrous beast, and the air transformed thick, cloying, filled with an ancient scent of mildew and despair. She gasped, fighting the urge to choke. "Mom!" Jake's voice shattered the suffocating silence, and Sarah felt her heart pound in response. "Keep moving. Don't stop," she rasped, dragging him forward, fear igniting her willpower as the ground shifted beneath them. They landed in a dimly lit cavern, walls shimmering with an oily sheen that reflected unnatural colors, deep blues and haunting greens that curled and writhed as if the surface were alive. The creatures had not followed them yet. "What is this place?" Jake whispered, his small face pale, his wide eyes brimming with terror. "I don't know," Sarah replied, her mind racing. She scanned the expansive cavern, each shadow ominous and alien. They were trapped in a hidden world, its saturated depths a prison made of pure nightmare. The echo of dripping water reverberated around them, each drop resonating like a tolling bell, time slipping away. She tightened her grip on the knife, its blade cool and reassuring, yet now felt woefully insufficient. "Over there," Jake pointed, and she turned to see a path winding through the glistening formations. It barely resembled a path, but a twisted throat of rock, beckoning them deeper into the hollow. "Stay close," she commanded, her instincts on high alert. Every fiber of her being screamed that danger lurked just out of sight. As they moved forward, the dripping intensified, forming a rhythm that echoed against the cavern walls. Was it water? Or something else? Then they heard it, a whisper, skittering from unseen corners. Join us, join us." The voice was thick like syrup, and it slithered through the air, wrapping around her like a noose. "Mom, I can't," Jake gasped, stumbling in place, his fear palpable. "They're calling me." "No," she snapped, yanking him to her. "They're trying to trap you." Realization hit her like a slap. It wasn't just a dark voice. It was a promise of something far worse. The whispers morphed into laughter, that low, chilling sound reverberating against the stone. There was no playfulness in it, only a sinister joy that grated against her. Then the wall to their right shifted, revealing a grotesque figure slinking through the shadows. Its features were monstrous, limbs stretched impossibly long, the skin undulating like it was made of gelatin. Sarah's breath caught. "Run!" she yelled, and they fled, the laughter growing louder, mocking their attempt to escape. But as they dashed deeper into the cavern, the ground undulated beneath them, rocks jutting out, tripping them like twisted hands. Sarah's breath came in ragged gasps, her heart racing as each sound seemed to amplify her fears. "Where do we go?" Jake cried, panic rising in his voice as they reached a cross-section of paths, each seeming equally dark and menacing. "Stay with me," Sarah shouted, trying to fight back her own rising panic. She looked down each corridor, each one thick with a darkness that felt hungry. "Mom!" Jake tugged at her sleeve, pointing down one of the paths. "That way." She hesitated, sensing a deeper unease from that corridor, but before she could fully process it, a whisper clawed at her thoughts. "Join us." It sliced through her like a knife, coaxing her into that oppressive darkness. Just as she was about to step forward, shadowy figures emerged from the periphery, their numerous eyes glistening hungrily in the waning light. "Join us," they crooned, and faint glimpses of Jake's wide eyes filled her with dread. "Jake, no!" she screamed, pulling him back as her knife quivered in her grasp. But the darkness was closing in fast. What if the very essence of fear had turned to finally consume them? She had to find a way, but at what cost? The last thing she saw was the distorted faces looming over them, a chorus of shadows, ready to drag them into their eternal laughter. "Run!" she shouted one last time, realizing the truth as despair struggled against hope. They were choices away from salvation or damnation. Ahead lay a shimmering light in the darkness, but when they reached it, would it be the salvation they sought, or the final snare waiting to trap them forever? The light was an illusion, a shimmering mirage that twisted oddly in the air. As Sarah and Jake ran towards it, the oppressive shadows lunged forward, silhouetted by slick walls that sparkled ominously. Fear clawed at Sarah's throat, choking off her breath. She pushed herself harder, her legs fueled by a desperate drive. "Just a bit further," she urged Jake, though she felt the weight of the darkness closing in behind them like a ravenous beast. "Mom!" Jake cried, his voice high and panicked. "It's too fast." Suddenly, the laughter erupted, ringing through the cavern, louder now, reverberating off the walls, vibrating within her bones. The chilling echo swallowed her hope whole, and she forced herself to focus on the light ahead. It felt like safety, like a way out. But the ground beneath them shifted again, a sudden bucking that sent Jake sprawling. "Jake!" Sarah wheeled around, her heart plummeting as he hit the ground, the knife slipping from her fingers. She lunged for him, eyes darting wildly, aware of the figures closing in around them, shadows laughing with that otherworldly glee. "Get up! We have to go!" She grabbed his arm, yanking him upward as the shadows slithered closer, hungry and eager. "Mom!" The light Jake's voice was barely a whisper, panic-stricken. "I know. I see it!" she yelled. They pushed past the gritting jaws of darkness together, scrambling through a narrow space that led to the bright glow. But the faint light bore an unsettling quality of flickering, almost alive in its own right. With every step, the laughter grew, turning into a cacophony of voices, some pleading, others taunting. "Join us, all is lost," they begged and sneered, each word wrapping around her like chains, dragging her down toward hopelessness. "Stay with me," she gasped, shaking the fear clinging to her like a heavy shroud. Just ahead, shifting shapes appeared, writhing against the light, and something wicked clawed at Sarah's mind. What if it wasn't escape at all? She took a breath, her senses screaming as she slammed into the wall of blinding brightness. "What is this?" It flickered tantalizingly, like a heartbeat, and Sarah found herself grasping Jake's wrist like a vice as she hesitated. "Mom!" Jake's pleading voice broke through the noise, drawing her attention back. He stared up at her, eyes wide, fear painted across his face. "We need to go." But the words came too late. The shadows lurched forward, a wave of darkness that dribbled off the cavern walls, slick and insatiable. Then, all at once, the light snapped bright and overwhelming. "Jake!" She screamed into the brilliance, but she was being pulled with an irresistible force. Sarah felt her body lift, her weight disappearing as the shadows clawed and grasped at her, tugging her back. Hope burst like a bubble, leaving only a gnawing dread as she looked to her son. Everything twisted in that moment, the bright space vibrating with agony as her cry echoed out. Jake was yanked away from her, a shadow snatching him from her grasp. "No! No!" The words erupted from her throat, raw and frenzied, as she fought to break from the clutches of the darkness. But she was losing her grip, and every heartbeat that passed sent a chill spiraling through her core. "Join us!" the figures loomed, reaching, pulling. "Jake!" The darkness around her pulsed, and the cavern erupted into a chorus of their laughing voices, a twisted symphony of despair. As the walls trembled, and the shimmering light flickered, Sarah understood something terrible. The cavern wasn't just a prison, it was a trap designed to lure the desperate. And they were far from the last. The shadows danced around her, voices mingling in a cacophony of longing and malice. She had to act. The knife was gone, but the fear surging in her veins gave her strength. Jake. Hold on. Acceptance burned within. She would not give in, but the sinking despair twisted into a question that resonated in her mind. Could she find him again, hidden in the prison of shadows? As she lunged into the brilliant light, her heart thundered with fear and determination, realizing she was about to cross a line that might end everything. Was this illumination salvation, or was it the cruelest deception of all? The light swallowed her whole, engulfing Sarah in a torrent of brilliance that made her eyes water. She blinked, trying to clear her vision, desperate for any sign of Jake. The laughter, infuriating and mocking, echoed in her ears, like sirens in the night. The shadows clawed at her, but in this new brightness, their grip faltered. "Jake!" she shouted, her voice a small, trembling thing against the overwhelming glow. "Where are you?" The brilliance pulsed, and then it began to dim. Shapes emerged from the haze, and with them came the chilling realization that the light was not just an exit, it was a barrier, a cruel illusion meant to keep her separated from Jake. Panic surged anew in her chest as her heart raced. She stumbled forward on shaky legs, each step an exercise in dread. The air was heavy with a metallic scent, a stark contrast to the warm light wrapping around her. There were outlines in the distance, figures standing still, silently watching her from the shadows of the brightness. Their eyes glinted with malice, hollow and expectant. "Join us," they whispered, their voices slithering into her mind like a serpent through grass. "Shut up!" she screamed, clenching her fists. She could not break their spell, but she wouldn't let them take her. Her thoughts flickered to Jake, his terrified face, the way he had clung to her before the shadows pulled him away. A sudden rush of adrenaline surged through her veins. She pressed deeper into the light, forcing herself to push through fear. "I will find you, Jake," she vowed, her voice echoing back at her like a promise twisting in the air. But the room transformed again. The light crackled, flickering as if struggling against an unseen force. Shadows writhed like live things, laughing cruelly as they danced closer, mocking her determination. "Your son is lost," they beckoned, their voices thick with glee. "Lost forever." With every taunt, the weight of despair pressed down on her shoulders. Tears filled her eyes, but she would not let them fall. She was fighting. Fighting for Jake. Then, from the periphery, a shiver of movement caught her eye. A figure, small and hunched, darted past in the half-light. It wasn't he fully formed. It blurred at the edges, flickering like a failing bulb. "Jake?" she called, her heart racing. Maybe it was him. Perhaps he had overcome the darkness. The figure paused, turning slightly, and in that moment, Sarah gasped. The laugh, it was wrong, not Jake's laughter, but a sinister mimicry. It twisted around her like a noose tightening, squeezing the breath from her lungs. The figure melted back into shadows, leaving only the echo of maniacal laughter that spiraled around her, mocking her hope. Sarah's heart thudded painfully in her chest as she fought panic again. The edges of the light grew sharper, as if pushing back against the impending dark, and for a fleeting second, she caught a glimpse of another doorway, an exit leading into a deeper chamber beyond. But was it a sanctuary or another trap? "Jake!" she shouted again, the sound tearing from her throat like a desperate prayer. The darkness pulsed, and inhuman figures shifted, contorting grotesquely with hunger. She felt them pulling at her soul, but something deep within her flared fiercely. She wouldn't give up. Determination ignited like wildfire. A weight was lifted, the realization that she would fight for him, fight even against this soul-crushing void. Taking a shaky breath, Sarah propelled herself toward the doorway, heart pounding, as the shadows lunged one last time. But would she step into light or into another nightmare? As she dashed forward, the laughter crescendoed into a piercing shriek. Her heart raced with uncertainty. What lay on the other side? And would it lead her back to her son, or into the abyss? She burst through the doorway, heart pounding in her ears, an urgent roar of fear and hope swirling inside her. The air shifted, dark and no longer filled with brilliant light, but a suffocating gloom that coiled around her like a serpent. The sound of laughter faded, replaced by the unsettling whispers of countless unseen voices, echoing from the depths. Each word slithered through her mind, promising twisted knowledge and devastating truths. "Welcome," they hissed, a chorus of malice. "You seek your child." The chamber opened into a vast expanse that felt alive, its walls pulsing with a strange, organic rhythm, as if the very structures were breathing. Stalactites dripped with an eerie luminescence, casting feeble glows on the shifting shadows that danced hungrily at the edges of perception. "Jake!" she yelled again, terror drenching her voice, a desperate prayer that ricocheted through the enormity of this nightmare. The shadows recoiled for a moment, as if stirred by her cry, shifting in ways that suggested movement beyond mere darkness. She stepped deeper into the chamber, the ground cold beneath her feet. A spiral marked the floor, drawn in a viscous substance that gleamed like oil in the dark. It shielded ancient truths and hidden horrors beneath its surface. Sarah felt an overwhelming dread wash over her, a primal instinct screaming for her to retreat, but she willed herself to keep moving forward. Then she saw a flicker of movement in the corner of her eye. Her blood froze momentarily, and she spun toward it. There, against the wall, was a doorway, just a slight outline obscured in shadow. She could feel warmth emanating from it, an inexplicable pull tugging at her heart. "Jake," she breathed, hope surging, electrifying her limbs. With each step, the walls around her hummed, vibrating with a sinister energy that seeped into her bones. The whispers grew louder, drowning her thoughts. Truth hung there like a knife, sharp and brutal. The air thickened, filled with heavy, oppressive dread. The voices warned of choices she wouldn't want to face, choices that could cost her everything. A sudden shriek erupted from the darkness, primal and raw. The shadows writhed like snakes, twisting and coiling as if sensing her approach. "You cannot save him," they cried in unison, grating her soul. "You'll lose more than just him, no," she shouted defiantly, shaking off the suffocating grasp of despair. She grasped the door's cold handle, twisting it slowly, and felt the air shift once more, like the breath of something alive. The door creaked open, a haunted sound that mirrored the cries echoing in her mind. She hesitated at the threshold, caught between the hope radiating from the glow inside and the darkness closing in around her. Then she heard it soft, so soft a familiar voice calling out, "Mom! Help!" Her heart leapt, a desperate flame igniting deep inside her. Without thinking, she lunged through the doorway, bursting into a new reality that felt somehow both welcoming and terrifying. As the door slammed shut behind her, the world around morphed once again, the shadows retreating but not vanishing. "Join us" echoed ominously from behind the door, chilling her to the bone. Inside this new space, she faced a reality broken only by the haunting echo of her son's plea. What awaited her? Darkness pressed and shuddered her odds. She had ventured too far. Would she find Jake, or would she let the shadows claim them both? The whispers surged again, taunting her once more. "The truth lies beyond if you dare to see." Each moment weighed heavy with dread, choices twisting in the air, and Sarah stood on the edge, confront the darkness at all costs, or be consumed by it entirely. The room opened before Sarah, a space separated from the suffocating darkness, filled with a soft glow that was both welcoming and disconcerting. Lush, strange vegetation surrounded her, vines sprawling toward a faint light filtering from above, casting a surreal beauty that felt oddly misplaced in her nightmarish journey. But the haunting echo of Jake's voice remained fresh, a lifeline wavering in the tides of their chaos. "Mom! The cries rang clearer this time, a sound that ignited both fear and fierce hope within her. "Jake!" she shouted, her voice breaking through the ethereal silence. Each step toward the source of the light felt like a trek through a dream that threatened to dissolve into terror. As she pushed forward, the air thickened with tension. The darkness whispered from behind her, clinging to her senses like a shadow. Her heart raced as she followed Jake's voice to a clearing alive with unfamiliar energy. The vegetation writhed, pulsing in rhythm, and there on the ground, her son sat huddled against a shimmering wall, fear flickering in his wide eyes. He was trapped, a barrier of shimmering energy surrounding him. "Mom! Help! Jake!" The sound erupted from her like a thunderclap, slicing through the malaise. She rushed toward him, adrenaline igniting her limbs, but the moment she reached the barrier, something shifted. The shimmering wall rippled ominously, its glow blurring into shadows. "Stay back!" she shouted, panic threatening to cue up the desperation surging through her veins. "Don't touch it!" Jake warned, his voice barely more than a whisper, eyes darting toward the edges of the glowing barrier, where shadows writhed with a sinister hunger. "They're watching!" Panic twisted within her, choking off her breath. The laughter echoed back, mocking, taunting. Memories of the creatures flooded her mind, shadows that clawed for more than just their sanity. They craved hope, light, everything viciously human. "Listen, Jake. I need you to stay calm," she instructed, voice steadying with purpose. "I'll find a way to get you out. I promise." Anxiety gripped her heart, weighing her down with the truth. The barrier was alive, concealing whatever darkness waited just beyond it. Then, in a moment of clarity, Sarah recalled the knife, a remnant from the struggle, still echoing within her mind, a symbol of fight and protection. "I need to focus," she whispered, scanning her surroundings for anything that might help her summon the courage to shatter the prison of light before her. And then it struck her. Above, nestled in the undulating vines and pulsing chiaroscuro light, hovered orbs radiating a soft illumination. "Those," she gasped. "They're not just decorations. They must be the key." With determination surging through her fears, she stepped cautiously toward the largest orb, its aura beckoning like a beacon amidst the encroaching night. Each step took her further away from the shadows, the whispers fading, drowned beneath the fervor burning in her chest. The closer she got, the more she felt her fear wrestle with hope, the key to unlock her son's chains. "Jake, I'm almost there," she shouted, feeling an electric current zapping through her limbs. He nodded, etched with unrelenting trust, mingled with terrifying uncertainty. Above, the orb pulsed faster, resonating against her soul, and she reached up, fingers brushing against its surface. In that instant, the air vibrated, charged with a rhythm beyond sight. The room shivered, shadows recoiling momentarily, as if the barrier were much weaker than it first appeared. "Together," she urged, her voice echoing across the chasm separating them. "Together, Jake. On 3, I'll activate the orb. 1, 2, 3. The orb lit up in a blinding brilliance that shattered through both their hearts. The laughter ceased. The moment felt frozen in time, but then a wave of heat surged outward, engulfing them. Shadows vanished under its light. The shimmering barrier flickered and cracked, as if the fabric of the darkness could no longer maintain its grip. "Mom!" Jake cried out, eyes shimmering with both fear and disbelief, as the barrier exploded into a cascade of light, surrounding them in a protective embrace. The force pulled them together, wrapped savagely in a ribbon of warmth. "I'm coming!" "Together!" she shouted again, and felt their hearts beat in sync. The world erupted into pulsating brilliance, a blinding crescendo of light that encased them, and with a breathless leap forward, they merged into the sanctuary they created together. In a blink, they were set free, falling, tumbling, until they landed cradled on soft grass under a star-specked night sky. Moonlight bathed them, soft, warm, and filling her with a breath of relief that echoed throughout her very core. They were home. For a heartbeat, Sarah held Jake, both of them awash in gratitude and disbelief. But in the back of her mind, the shadows lingered. Had they truly escaped? Was the darkness behind, or were they simply hovering above a prelude to a greater storm? I thought I'd lost you," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks, mixing with the dirt of that vibrant earth. "I'll always find you. You're my light, and I'll protect you." Jake smiled faintly, reaching up to wipe away her tears. "You were so brave, Mom." They stayed like that, caught in a moment that felt precious yet fragile. But even in that warmth, Sarah felt the tendrils of uncertainty whispering at the edges of her heart. A flood of thought surged within the lessons learned, the terror faced. Would it ever truly end? "Maybe we just need to be ready," she said gently. She held onto Jake's hand, tighter than before, vowing never to let go. And as they stood together on that familiar ground, she knew their little world might be watched, always watched, but they were ready. They were safe for now, but the night had much more to reveal. And together, they would face whatever darkness dared to cross their path. "Ready, Mom?" "Ready," she smiled, determination lining her words. Then, as if on cue, a distant shimmer caught her eye, a flicker that echoed beyond the trees, a reminder that shadows lurked ever closer, but they would stand united, armed with hope, and prepared to face whatever nightmare tried again. Because after all, the fight for their ordinary lives amidst the extraordinary had only just begun. As the stars twinkled above, a soft wind rustled through the leaves, and Sarah understood sometimes the darkest paths lead to the brightest beginnings. And whatever came next, they would face it together. Now is your moment. If you love Sarah and Jake's incredible journey, you need to subscribe to the channel right now so you never miss an exclusive story. Don't forget to smash that like button to help feed the algorithm and keep this community growing. I want to hear from you. Flood the comments section with your reactions, thoughts, and theories. What did you think of the ending? What about the darkness? And don't wait even one more second. Share this riveting conclusion with at least 5 friends who need to see this. Your voice matters. Let us keep this ride going together.